African environmentalists say the world's leading economies must make more of a commitment to help developing nations fight climate change. VOA West Africa correspondent Scott Stearns has more.
Climate negotiators met in Germany to follow up on last year's Copenhagen summit, which failed to set legally binding limits on greenhouse gas emissions. African delegates to those talks say aid to developing nations to combat climate change is expected to total about $10 billion over the next 2 years. They want that to rise to as much as $100 billion by 2020. Malian delegate Boubacar Siddiqui says reducing greenhouse gas emissions means helping Africans to adopt new technologies.
We need the financing for adaptation. The key issue for African is adaptation to climate change, how to finance projects and things like this in our countries.
This meeting discussed how to reach Copenhagen's non-binding pledge to limit the rise in world temperatures to less than 2 degrees Celsius. The accord was backed by more than 110 nations, including the world's biggest greenhouse gas producers, China, the United States, Russia, and India. Ghanaian delegate William Kojo says wealthy economies that grew through heavily polluting technologies cannot hold developing economies to a different standard unless they're willing to help provide a cleaner alternative.
Africa is the most underdeveloped continent, and therefore what we need to do for Africa is to support Africa to get developed. Okay, and what is required for development is the provision of support in the form of technology. Okay, and I think that is what needs to be done in Africa, to get the right technologies in place to allow us to live from and have proper development that affects the social systems. Otherwise, there's nothing that we can achieve.
While most African environmentalists support the goals of Copenhagen's greenhouse gas targets, they do not want this non-binding accord to supersede the 1992 Kyoto Protocol, which puts the onus on wealthier nations to lead the way on climate change. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Dakar.